Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Carefulist, the podcast. We have Jenn Fredericks joining us from Wisconsin. She is a caregiver and Prosilience coach, which she will explain in a bit. But before we get to all of that, let's start at the very beginning. Jenn, tell us a little bit about your caregiving story.
Sure. That always makes me think of Sound of Music. Let's start at the very beginning.
Very good place to start.
Start. I was Liesel once in high school. Okay, moving on.
Yes.
I started my caregiving journey in 2015. Um, my husband and I adopted a beautiful daughter back in 2008 due to some chronic kidney illness issues and transplant that I have. And so we built our family on adoption. And that really doesn't have much to do with the story other than I'm very proud of how we built our family and how
Yeah.
she came into our lives. So this beautiful girl with a heart of gold was diagnosed at 7 years old with a low-grade brain tumor. And that day changed sort of the trajectory of our lives. And I'm not going to say it was for the worst because I believe in living the both and the and. So the hard times and the brilliantly joyous times. So started kind of slow initial diagnosis and treatment to get things back to some sort of stability for her. And then over the years, just different comorbidities popped up. And so those are the things that we're dealing with now, as well as taking care of treatment for her tumor.
Mhm.
Um, and I have to say, the medical piece is hard.
Yeah.
The mental and emotional piece is harder.
Yes.
And so that's really where I put a lot of my energy as a caregiver is managing my mental and emotional health so that
Mhm.
I can model and influence how she shows up in living life with a chronic life-threatening illness.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this has been a long journey.
Long journey. Yeah, she's 16 now. So we've
Yeah.
been managing it quite a long time. And it it's not lost on me that the age that she is now was the age that I had my first kidney transplant. So while I thought it was difficult at my age as a teenager, she had
Yeah.
been doing this for years before that
Right.
age. So I marvel at her strength and just she's always had a heart of gold and she still has it.
Yeah. Well, I know that the road has been long, and I know that there are a lot of challenges currently and ahead, but she has the right parents for the situation. And because of your personal experience with not one, but two
Yeah,
kidney
yeah.
transplants,
Yep.
yeah, um, you have more understanding than a lot of parents would for that particular situation. So, talk a little bit about being how do I want to say this? A caregiver of yourself because you have your own medical complexity, and then also being caregiver for someone else because we hear a lot about sandwich generation caregiving where somebody's healthy or whatever
Yeah.
taking care of multiple generations. We don't talk often, at least not on this show, for people who are maintaining their own health and their own challenges in addition to somebody else.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. It's a very important one, and bringing even more awareness to the sandwich generation is also very important. Maybe I should come up with a name for what I'm doing. I
You
don't have
should.
what kind of food would it be? I'm not even sure. I'll have to
Yeah.
think on that one. Um, I would say I've always been a realistic optimist,
Hmm.
which means that I recognize what's happening. Like this is reality.
Yeah.
I know that I'm not gonna wallow in worry.
Hmm.
I want to figure out what is the next step to support me or my loved one and move
Hmm.
forward. And I'm not saying this from a place of like, for those who may spend more time in worry to like shame them. I'm not. That's also very, very normal and very human.
Hmm.
And if we can recognize that and then decide what we want to do with it, I think is the important part. I had wonderful modeling from my parents. My dad was my first kidney donor. My mom, wonderful caregiver, who also modeled for me taking care of an aging parent. Her
Hmm.
mother lived with us while I was in middle school until she passed. And my mom, just like her mom, have the heart of a saint,
Hmm.
just beautiful and patient and loving and full of care. And so I think that translated to me taking care of myself,
Hmm.
as well as the fact that I was a teenager. I was 16. I was immortal. Like, yeah, fix it. You found this problem. Let's fix
Yeah.
it. Let's move on. I have plans. So I think
Right.
that helped me through the first transplant very much so.
Yeah.
The second one was a little more difficult because we had adopted our daughter. She was 4 years old. In
Hmm.
2012, I had my second kidney transplant, and the donor was my husband's twin brother because they're fraternal twins. My husband wanted to, but couldn't donate. We weren't
Yeah.
good. We weren't matched well. So
Yeah.
that was a little more difficult. I did run into some issues with mental and some emotional
Yeah.
problems. And it was just that weight of what am I going to do? I have this career. I was in marketing, corporate marketing at the time. I
Hmm.
have this husband. I have a 4-year-old daughter. I need to
Yeah.
get better now. And I found myself really in the energy of worry.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that I looked for something to support me that maybe was outside of traditional medicine and
Hmm.
looked to what we now do more in traditional medicine, into meditation and guided
Hmm.
imagery. And that really
Yeah.
helped me as I was on dialysis and moving toward the transplant.
Hmm.
I'm thinking now to the time, maybe 2 years after my daughter's diagnosis, when the trauma of the initial diagnosis started to, I think, really reemerge for her.
Hmm.
And there was a lot of emotional strain within her,
Hmm.
big feelings she didn't know what to do with. And so
Yeah.
then those big feelings came toward me and my husband. And
Hmm.
I can handle the week-long hospital stays, the machines beeping overnight. I
Hmm.
didn't know how to handle that.
Yeah.
And so I looked for, like I said, even more resources to help me so I could help her. I enrolled in mindfulness-based stress reduction course.
Hmm.
I happened to be laid off at the same time from my marketing job and took some weird leap and thought, well, I've never had a coaching session, but maybe I'll be a life coach. And so then I started certification, and the things that I learned there, yes, were for my career transition, but more so to heal me so that I could help her.
Yes. There's mm, there's so much challenge in dealing with your own diagnosis on top of being a parent and having a career. All of those things are so demanding of not just your time and your energy, but really like who you are as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And
Definitely.
then to also have a child who is going through that. Um, you said something that I think about a lot, when my family situation was different in that my mom had Alzheimer's, my kids were really little, and we were trying to explain what was happening in terms
Yeah.
that they could understand. Uh, and it's the same across the board. Adults don't understand what's happening. whether it's cancer or dementia or Parkinson's or whatever, for a child to try and process it, there are going to be big feelings and they're going to come out. And of course, they come at mom and dad because you're the safe space.
Right?
And, there's this stuff online and on social about how, um, you know, in some ways that's very validating for parents because you are the place they come with all of that. Yeah, it doesn't feel like that in the moment.
No,
It feels pretty awful in the moment.
it feels like
Um,
daggers being thrown at you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I wish people would talk about that
Mhm.
more. And
Yeah.
so I'm glad you brought that up.
It was really difficult. And the big feelings would come out even for my husband and I when I don't know, events happened that weren't even related to the big feelings.
Yeah.
And that's how emotions work.
Yeah.
I remember one time she had really started liking thin cut pork chops. And I had made concerted effort to go to the store and get thin cut pork chops and told her about it when I picked her up from school. And she was so excited and started cooking them. And she came into the kitchen and it was just not what she wanted anymore. Lots of um, proper words exchanged and emotions and energies exchanged. But it was at that time, all I could do was breathe. And that's what I
Yeah.
had learned at the time in my certification for coaching was taking that time when the only thing in a situation that you can control is yourself,
Mhm.
is finding your way to get back to how you want to experience the moment. And I didn't want
Yes.
to experience it with like, yes, the gravy was bubbling on the stove, but also like everything was bubbling up inside of me.
Yeah.
And that's not the evening I wanted to have. And so I put myself in timeout and I just breathed
Yeah.
until my central nervous system was more regulated and I could
Hmm.
come back and engage. And then it turns out, guess what? Wasn't even about the pork chop.
Right.
It was about something that some kid at school had said to her that day.
Yes.
But instead of accessing that memory, it was easier to get mad at the pork chop.
Right. Yes. You said something that made me remember a time multiple times. It was a span of time, happened
Mhm.
repeatedly in the kitchen, and my kids were little and processing all of the things that were happening with my mom. And something would happen at school and they were still dealing with these big feelings of, she didn't know their names or she couldn't play with them anymore or whatever. And all the big feelings would come my way. And it would always be during making dinner in the kitchen because that's when you're all finally home. And,
Yes.
my go-to keep myself calm, it didn't always work. I am not perfect. There is no such thing as perfection. um, I would go to the sink and run my hands under warm water. And
Mm.
that would help to relax me enough to be able to put my feelings into a place of I'll deal with my feelings later. I am
Yeah.
calm enough to deal with you and yours.
Yeah. Oh, I love that technique that you just shared. Yeah, that's an amazing one. It's like that there's magic in disruption. And so the
Yes.
disruption of the sensory of the water running over your hands, you're just being able to focus on that and bring you into the present is
Mhm.
so powerful. I love that you have that. And, maybe others would really find that helpful. Or if not that, maybe it is the focusing on breath,
Yeah.
just being able to regulate our central nervous system, which actually is one of the first building blocks of the Prosilience framework I coach on, is
Mhm.
regulating and calming yourself. Because until our wise mind is online,
Mhm.
we're not able to make big decisions or connect in a meaningful way with people to resolve what's going on.
Yeah. So you just mentioned Prosilience. Can you explain
Yes,
to the audience what that is and how they could benefit from coaching?
definitely. So I wish that I had come up with the Prosilience framework or the proactive resilience framework. I didn't, but I'm lucky enough to have discovered it. It was just that, brought to life by Linda Hoops, a organizational psychologist, and she has researched resilience for 30 years. I was in the process of learning more about resilience because people always say, how are you so resilient? And I didn't really know. It was just, I just always did the thing.
Yeah.
And I was researching, compassion fatigue, compassion resilience, and ran across prosilience, which was originally brought about for organizations. And as I read her book, Prosilience, it was like she had been following me since I was 15. I, people ask me how I did it. I didn't know. I now read this book
Hmm.
and I've said, this is how I did it. I didn't know, but it's about intentionally building your capability to deal with life's challenges before you encounter them.
Mm.
Now, what's interesting is I discovered it while I was in the mix of life's challenge. So, what I found is that using this building block, the 4 building blocks, can actually help you come to your baseline of resilience. So then you can start to plan and use the same skills to
Mhm.
fortify yourself for future challenges. So, resilience is made up of 4 building blocks. And when I work with clients individually or in groups,
Mhm.
we go through each of these in a session and we see how it is um, coming up in your life and then how you can apply it in your life so that you can build your strength of resilience. So, those 4 building blocks are: one, calming yourself;
Mhm.
two, choosing a strategy to meet the challenge that's in front of you; three, engaging your resilience muscles or your problem solving muscles.
Mhm.
And there are 7 of those that we all have. And then the last, but sometimes I just think it's a red thread that goes through all of them, is learning to manage your personal energy, your physical,
Mm.
mental, emotional, and spiritual. And learning about those energies and how to keep them fueled actually fuels our overall resilience. And so, a lot of times, especially with caregivers, I start there. I start
Mhm.
with learning to calm self and learning to manage your personal energy.
Yeah. Well, the calming piece is so fundamental. Um, and it also sometimes seems like the least accessible one.
Oh my gosh, it's so simple and it's so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is it so hard?
Well, we can pontificate that on that for a while, but one of them is I think I don't know that we really have been taught
Yeah.
how to, and also we haven't been shown that it's okay to acknowledge when we are not regulated. Like
Yes.
that's a normal thing. A lot of times it can bring shame.
Hmm.
So, although it seems really easy, like, oh, just calm yourself. Like the first time someone tells you to calm down, what do you want to do? As a caregiver, like when people say that, calm down, like calm yourself, or hey, be sure to take care of yourself, I want to throw something at them.
Yes. Yep.
So that's why it's hard. We're not taught it in school. Maybe we have family of origins that didn't discuss emotion or didn't really show how to work through challenges in a calm way. Like it is a
Mhm.
skill that you learn and build. And if we
Yeah.
don't have opportunities to do that, that's why it's hard.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The worst thing you can do is tell somebody to calm down.
Yeah.
Like, say anything else. Tell them they're wrong before you tell them to calm
Tell
down.
them the sky is pink or no, like anything else just to, yeah. Uh, that's why I like to frame it in a way that's talking about, you know, managing your energy and like you have control over this thing, even if you don't have control over life circumstances. And
Mm.
when you also can educate people about how their brain works,
Mm.
and the difference between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, and whichever one is engaged and in charge, how that can change your emotional um, reality at the time, or how you're thinking. It
Hmm.
really makes a difference. I know that's one of the first things that when my daughter started working with someone for her mental and emotional health, they
Hmm.
teach the kids that they're working with, hey, this is how your brain works, and this is why you're feeling this way, and it's normal, and there's a way to feel differently.
Yeah. Boy, would that have helped everybody.
Everybody. Yeah. There's a meme floating out there that I saw years ago that was just talking about how if we would spend time teaching children mindfulness and even the way the brain works, how much more productive that would be than having like detention.
Yes. Yes. Because if you taught that, my guess is the need for detention would plummet.
Here's hoping.
I mean, that's a whole other
Yeah,
conversation,
that's a
I
whole like,
think.
do
But
you have another hour? Let's see. But no, I mean, we aren't taught this. We aren't, and if you don't have someone modeling it for you, it's not your first
yeah,
go-to, and it's not the way our brain was designed to work.
right. Yeah. So in our previous conversations,
Mm-hmm.
um, you talked about the benefits of being able to reframe the challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think based on what we've been talking about just now, that kind of ties in and fits in nicely. So can you talk to the audience a little bit about the benefits of reframing a challenge?
Sure. And actually reframing is one of the strategies that you can choose when you're working through a building block of Prosilience. So the three strategies that are available to us are reframing, or taking something that looks and feels like danger and finding a way to look at it that gives a more positive meaning and allows us to have possibility to move forward. Another strategy would be to change the situation. A lot of that, especially as caregivers, we aren't able to change the overall situation. Another is to accept what is and adjust and adapt ourselves. That's the one that I really tend to look at for me. I'm thinking of a situation, not a situation, but a moment when we live pretty close to our children's hospital. And one time we were driving by, my husband and and I got into the woe is me. I don't normally do that. I don't normally ask a lot about why me.
Mhm.
I go more to the reality of the situation and work with it from there. But whatever the day, for whatever reason, I was in that
You're
space.
human.
You're human. We're allowed that. So we're driving by, and I'm just like, like, oh, we have to go there next week. Like, why? Why is this happening? And he asked, well, why not us? He's like, there are families in there right now who are asking the same question as they were driving by one day. And now
Mhm.
they find themselves. So that reframe, I really enjoy that reframe that he served to me that day.
Mhm.
That, why not us? And another one I hear a lot of is that question of, why is this happening to me? And
Mhm.
one thing I'll invite clients to think about is, what is this teaching me? Or what is this allowing me to experience so that I can grow?
Mhm.
Now, I don't offer that when people are in crises, because at that time, we need to get to our baseline of survival and stability.
Right.
But for those that are interested in that type of thinking or work, I love taking them there, like asking that, okay, we just had a scan for my daughter that didn't turn out quite the way we thought it was going to. Okay, why? Why is this happening? No. What is this showing us? Well, this is showing us that I think maybe I'm still working that out a little bit in my head. What is
Mhm.
this trying to show us or allowing us to see in a different way? But she did say something last week. We were all sitting on the couch. I think it was, yeah, I think we were all watching a movie or something. And again, this is a 16-year-old sitting on the couch with her parents. And she just said, like, I hate that this is happening, but I'm so glad we get to do it together. I mean,
Amazing. Well, and that just speaks so much to the way that you have supported her. And she is old enough and mature enough
mm-hmm.
to recognize the champions that she has in
And the
the two of
champion
you.
that she is, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to let your listeners know, you guys, this didn't happen automatically. This didn't happen overnight. Building this type of support and connection and outlook for what we're managing, it takes time and patience, and sometimes even figuring it out all over again in a different way.
Yeah. And a lot of work.
A,
It's
a lot of
not
work.
easy.
It isn't easy, but like one thing I like to say is, why are we working so hard to heal ourselves or our loved ones
Mhm.
um, if we're not going to truly live and enjoy the time that we have?
Yes. Yes. And that part is hard sometimes because you are so mired, or you can be so mired in everything that
Mm-hmm.
is wrong or
Mm-hmm.
spiraling out of control. And being able to find joy or humor in a situation that is not humorous
Right.
can be very difficult, but it is also such a lifeline. Um, so, to that end, what is something that you find joy in, or you as a family um, take time to enjoy, or I'm losing my
No.
vocabulary. Perimenopause is great.
Right. That's wonderful. We're all fine. We're fine. It's fine.
That's a different podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I've always just had an undercurrent of some people might see me as a Pollyanna, if you know that reference, like
Mhm,
positive in any situation. And that's not true, but I have always had an undercurrent of silliness and
mhm.
humor. And thankfully, I found a partner who appreciates that and also participates in that.
Yeah.
And our daughter as well just has like a great sense of humor. So there's one thing that she always says, like when a doctor's asking her, "Oh, hey, how's it going? Do you need a refill on anything?" She always says, "Yes, I need a refill on my dignity." And I mean, it just brings everyone in the room except for her dad and I to laughter, because like who says that?
Right.
And then of course I always chime in as the coach of the family, as being like, "You don't need a prescription, it's inside of you." And she hates that. But just finding those moments of joy. Joy isn't
Yeah.
something, I don't believe joy is something that lasts. And that sounds horrible. But what I
Mhm.
mean by that is that there can be fleeting moments of joy in the most terrible circumstances.
Yes.
So I'm thinking of, when she was first diagnosed and in the hospital for a week.
Mhm.
And the moments of joy would be for her, oh, they have chocolate ice cream. She ate the floor out of chocolate ice cream, and it became a running joke for all of the nurses and the doctors, the care team, and us and her. And she still remembers that.
Yeah.
And it's just finding those moments that can bring you a bit of buoying of your spirit.
Yes.
Like, is it the butterfly that flies by your car as you're parking and getting ready to take your loved one into a doctor's appointment that you're dreading? Like,
Hmm.
what signs of everyday miracles do you see
Hmm.
and recognize for yourself? And one thing I'm going to invite your listeners to do is to practice presence.
Mhm.
Even in those most difficult times, a lot of times we want to try to remove ourselves from that reality. But when we can practice presence and be where our feet are, we're able to manage those difficult situations more easily or in a way that doesn't drain our energy and start to create the signs of burnout that many caregivers face.
Yeah.
Um, we actually, I don't know, maybe 3 years after her diagnosis, she was in for a procedure, and our children's hospital is great. They always ask the patient as well as the family, what's the most important thing today?
Mhm.
And normally she would say chocolate ice cream or meeting a therapy dog or going to the playroom or whatever. But this one day she said to be where my feet are. And
Mm,
that is something that I had heard from a colleague during coach certification. And I have little post-its around the house that say that. And it's
mhm.
just that reminder of presence and meeting the moment the way that you want to experience it. And I
Yeah.
looked at this 9-year-old. I was like, oh my gosh, you've been listening.
Right.
And it was a
Yeah.
great reminder for her dad and I too, that don't let yourself flit away on all of the worries about not knowing what's going to happen next. Like we know what's going on right now. We know what we can do to support ourselves and to help, manage or fix the problem. Like be here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes me think of a couple of things. One of the I call it a gift.
Mm,
I mean, dementia overall, like 0 stars, do not recommend.
do not recommend. No.
But there are gifts. And one of the gifts that I received from it was noticing those smaller things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Butterflies,
Mm-hmm.
cardinals, or other birds, whatever, just finding something that pulls you in to that moment and you can just kind of be yourself and within
Mm-hmm.
yourself, if that makes sense,
Oh,
in
totally.
that thing that you're looking at or enjoying, beautiful flowers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So when my mom was in the active phase of passing,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, her birthday was the end of August, and I went to visit. I live a couple hours away, um, and to presumably say my goodbyes.
Yeah.
We were leaving for a vacation that we had booked a year prior,
Mm-hmm.
and that all felt odd. It was her birthday, and to say goodbye and knowing we were going on vacation, the whole thing just felt off and wrong. Um, and I had thought, and that's the weird thing about dementia is you have this very long runway of multiple
Mm-hmm.
goodbyes to different phases and abilities and all kinds of things. And then you have that one final goodbye that you kind of, at least I did, build up in my head of what it's going to be, what it has to be, blah, 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 blah. And that goodbye was not the final goodbye. She actually lived the entire time we were on vacation,
Mm-hmm.
and we went directly there. And I was able to say the goodbye that I really wanted to. So on her birthday, I left her with happy birthday, mom. We love you.
Mm-hmm.
But with the final goodbye, I was able to say all the things I wanted to say. And being away for vacation gave me that opportunity to really think through, like, okay, if she doesn't pass while we're away, this is what I want to say. And having that opportunity was a huge gift to me. And, one would hope that, you know, she was able to hear and process what was said.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I completely believe, and I believe there are also some studies out there that show that loved ones are able to hear what we share with them. in
Mhm.
some of their final moments. And what you just shared brings up something I try to share with people as not trying to be Pollyanna, but
Mhm.
and also not trying to say everything happens for a reason because I can't believe that I don't know. I can't say that about my 7-year-old being diagnosed with a brain tumor or me needing a kidney transplant at 16 years old. But I
Right.
can't say everything happens for a reason, but I can say, and I do believe, and I have seen evidence of trusting in the unfolding
Yeah.
and allowing things to unfold in ways that we didn't even think of,
Mhm.
and how those can bring us great comfort and joy and wisdom
Yes.
when we allow ourselves to do that.
Right. And that's the qualifier is when you allow yourself.
Yeah.
And again, no such thing as perfection, all
Mm-mm.
things in time. Because I mean, when I was in the thick of it with the caregiving and having the little kids and the career and all of that, there was no way. Did you need to take a break?
I think I do.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's fine.
Okay, hold on.
Sure.
And I'm back. I don't know if you know that skit. And we're back. Um, Thank you so much. You can even add that in if you want, just to show people how not perfect caregiving is. So I'm up here speaking with you, doing the work that I love. My daughter's downstairs not feeling well. And I did hear my phone like ping once. Like,
Yeah.
oh, what's going on? She just didn't feel well again and was
Oh,
sick to her stomach. She's fine. But, it's like, this is life. This is being in the throes of it.
yes. Yes. And there's so much juggling that happens. And one of the favorite or my favorite pieces of advice that I've ever gotten, and I share this whenever I can, and you may have heard this before, is that we're all jugglers
Mm,
and everything that we're juggling is either made of glass or plastic.
mm,
And your only job is to keep the stuff that's made of glass in the air. Everything else bounces.
I love that.
So this podcast, plastic, it bounces.
It bounces. I love it. I love that. I also,
Taking care of your daughter, definitely glass.
right. Yeah. And making sure the cat doesn't come in on my heels also,
That
because
would be welcome. That's
he
fine.
would be right here. I appreciate that. Uh, and I've not heard that before. So I really love that. I tend to do this kind of thing.
Hmm.
Yeah, like if an employer would ask me, "Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where are you going to be in 5 years?" I would be like, "I don't know where I'm going to be tomorrow. So I'm
Right.
going to do this. I'm going to have some stars that I'm heading towards,
Yeah.
and we might take different paths to get there."
Hmm.
And that's what we do in our house.
Yeah. Well, and that's a very interesting point because that where do you see yourself in 5 years is a question that is asked by people who have not had life happen to them.
Right? Like, just wait. You won't be wanting to ask that soon.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
I we're even dealing with my, when working with my health and when I needed to take time off for my kidney transplant, my go-to answer for that question on reviews when I was in agency and corporate marketing would
Hmm.
be I plan to focus on keeping myself and my family healthy in mind, body, and spirit.
Hmm.
And the path to get there may look different than what I plot out. And so I can plot it out and use energy to plot it out and then, you know, have a bunch of squiggly lines in between all of those plotted points.
Yeah.
Or I can just kind of trust in the unfolding.
Yes. Yeah. And that is so key. And what you choose to do in the moments of it as it's unfolding.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think this is what we were chatting about before our little pause was it could be really hard to see what those things are. And when it's unfolding as you're so mired in all of the stuff
Mm-hmm.
that's going on. Um, and that's okay because there will be a time where things aren't so heavy and aren't so sticky. And you can look back and go, oh, okay. Well, this is what I can do with what I learned or what I experienced.
Right. It is not an in the moment aha and transformation.
Yeah.
When I was talking about the pork chop earlier,
Mhm.
I was literally still in the practice of breathing. So I was going through coach certification and we had these um, awesome trainings that I'd go to in person and then we'd go away and have readings that we would be asked to do, and everyone else would come back having read all of these things and I would just be like really hard on myself, like, oh, but no, I was breathing
Mhm.
for 3 months and I was taking what I learned in the training course and applying it, not saying that the others weren't, but applying it in like my daily life to make my daily life better at that moment. And that's
Yes.
why I say yes, it was a career transition,
Hmm.
but it was more to heal me and to
Yes.
have those practices become part of my DNA. So now when things happen in life, there's sort of like automatic responses. It's muscle memory. And
Hmm.
that's the same thing with some of the Prosilience framework that I share now. Is I guess I've been doing it all my life. I just didn't know how to articulate it. And
Hmm.
now I do. And now I can share that with others so that we can practice these in little bits and pieces and then bring them all together as we're ready, so that when life happens, we don't have to fall, or we don't have to fall so far and then use all of our
Right.
energy to pull ourselves back up. Like in those moments of calmer, quieter times, let's do a little bit of action planning
Hmm.
and building some of these skills so that
Yeah.
when the next loud part of life comes, it doesn't
Hmm.
sweep you off your feet.
Right. Something you said made me think of one of my favorite movies, which is Sleepless in Seattle.
Yes.
And Tom Hanks is talking about his grief and talking about um, after the loss of his wife, well, I'm gonna get out of bed every morning and I'm gonna breathe in and out. And after a while, I won't have to remind myself to get out of bed and breathe in and out. And that is exactly what this path is.
Yeah.
It is that. It is doing those fundamental things and thinking about those fundamental things
Mm-hmm.
until it becomes muscle memory and you are
Mm-hmm.
able to do it without thinking about it so that you can turn your active thought process to other things that require your attention.
Totally. Hard stop. Yeah.
Yeah. So it can be really hard to hear someone say, You need to secure your own oxygen mask before you can secure someone else's. That's
Ah,
another one that
yes.
makes me want to throw things.
It,
So,
yeah.
what's your advice on that? How does one do that?
Yes. And I have an interesting question for us to all ponder. Why do we have such a visceral reaction to that? It just, the question just came up. Why does it bother us so much? Besides I barely have time to eat or sleep, or yes, I get all of that. And what are we maybe not allowing ourselves to do
Right.
to secure our own oxygen mask? I will tell you that this goes back to the question you asked too, like, how do I take care of myself and my own chronic illness and then also my daughter's? Well, there was a
Hmm.
time when I didn't. And where did I end up? I ended up in a fetal position after I ate every time. I ended up weighing under 100 pounds because of the physical manifestation of anxiety
Hmm.
and not getting movement and not staying properly hydrated and not so all of those fundamental things that we need as human beings to live,
Hmm.
I wasn't able to do because my mental and emotional health was in such a bad place.
Yeah.
So, what did I do? I'm trying to think back. One, that was about the time that I started doing mindfulness based stress reduction classes.
Hmm.
And it was just me asking myself the question, like, how do I want to experience this?
Yeah.
Do I want to show up frazzled all of the time or not able to do anything or show up as myself for myself and my family because I can't get out of bed because of anxiety? Or do I want
Hmm.
to live?
Right.
And I don't mean, I do mean live physically, but I also mean like live, like
Like have a life.
have a life.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for us as caregivers and patients to ask ourselves the question, like, we're here on earth right
Hmm.
now, and it's hard and it's beautiful. Or as Glennon Doyle Melton would say, it's brutal. It's brutal and
Yes.
beautiful at the same time. Like, but what do we want to do with it?
Yeah.
That's where our power lies. So yeah, we can get mad at people saying, be sure to take care of yourself, put your oxygen mask on. And my tip would be ask yourself, what does that look like for you?
Hmm. Yeah.
And then
What is
do
your
one,
oxygen?
yeah, exactly. And then do one small thing to move you toward putting, the mask on and pulling one strap tight. And when you don't, when you aren't able to do it one day, be gentle with yourself and try again the next day. Or if you want to keep living without an oxygen mask and experiencing life that way, that's fine. But then take personal responsibility for that piece
Hmm.
and know that that's the choice that you made and how to
Hmm.
experience it. That might be hard to hear. People might be mad that I said that. That's where our power lies in life.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm quiet because I'm giving people a chance to think about that.
I'm like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have said, but it's true. In the moments when I was in a fetal position on my bed, I was allowing everything else to overtake me.
Hmm.
And I was not taking personal responsibility for identifying what support I needed
Yeah.
and what support I deserved
Yeah.
that then I could ask for. And so I take total responsibility. Like I hold myself accountable for that. I was not doing what I could do for myself at the time. However, I needed to experience that.
Hmm.
It was part of my journey so that I could get to the place that I'm at now.
Yeah. So for people who may not recognize it in themselves,
Sure.
but someone who loves them and cares about them sees it, what is something that that person can say or that person can do to get the one they love and care about on a path,
Right.
if that makes sense?
Totally makes sense. You know, one of the essential human needs is to be seen, heard, and acknowledged. So if you are connected to that loved one, you should be able to show them how you see them.
Hmm.
You can help them feel heard, and you can acknowledge that light in them that you see and know is there that they
Hmm.
may not feel burning right now. And when we can do it in a way of coming from love, and I believe it all comes from love, but sometimes fear clouds love. So when we're
Hmm.
concerned or worried for someone, it's coming from a place of deep love and caring. However, we present it to the other person and from a place of criticism or you should do this or and
Hmm.
that's just because we care so much. Fear is born of love. But when we can come from a place of intention of loving the person and speaking from that space,
Hmm.
your loved one will most likely be more receptive to hearing what you see, hear, and value
Yeah,
in them.
yeah, that's really good advice. So, as an example, if you are a spouse, a sibling, whomever, and you're noticing something and it looks like they're struggling, um, sometimes maybe they just need validation
Yeah,
that you see that they're struggling. So you could say something like, hey, things seem like they're really hard right now. Don't ask what you can do. Just full stop. Things seem like they're really hard right now.
right. Yeah,
And then ask, what is it like for you? And just give them the chance to talk about it.
right.
Sometimes just being able to talk about it will lift things for them, and hearing themselves say the words can put it into perspective and motivate them. And if it doesn't, it gives you a good window into what's happening. And maybe, you can figure out what you can do to help or something, it certainly informs what you say next.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it's a lot of the things that I'll maybe say to my daughter or ask my daughter. I actually learned, if you've heard of Love and Logic, the
Mhm.
parenting, it's really great. It's a great communication. It's a great way to, validate people's feelings. So it's that this seems really hard for you right now, or I can see that you're struggling to, yeah, the validation piece is immensely important before we go into what is the next step then, because we don't want to
Mhm.
squash the feelings that people are having,
Right,
because then that can lead to everything kind of being pushed down until it erupts.
right.
I love that question that you posed.
And just making sure that you do the least amount of talking when you have that conversation. You are not there to lecture. You're not there to, it seems like you're there to problem solve. You're kind of not. You're really there. It's an information gathering conversation.
Mhm.
So you pose the question and then you stop.
Yes, like don't be the fix it person. Don't be the fixer in that moment.
And I have to remind myself of that because
Yeah,
my go-to reaction is always to fix things
me
and
too. Yeah.
lighten the mood and make things seem better. And there's a time and a place for that, but this
Mhm.
conversation isn't it?
Right. I agree with that.
So you have some exciting news and things going on. There are a couple of books that just published that you were a contributing author.
Yes.
You want to share the titles and where people can go for more information?
Sure, I would love to. Thank you. Yes, one of them is called When Stories, When, When Stories, When Everything Changed. And the book actually came after live stage presentations or sharing of stories. And so all of the contributing authors, we had a chance to get up on stage and share our story. And mine focused on a very close to my heart question that came to me during my daughter's initial diagnosis when we were there for a week in the hospital. And I hadn't shared it really anywhere else in public. Sometimes in some of the caregiving groups that I speak with or one-on-one clients I shared it with, but this felt like the time and place to
Mm.
share. So I'm very proud of that chapter. It's the speech that I gave with some additional insights. And when stories can be found in any of your online book retailers, Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble, all of those. We actually just had the book signing um, on Sunday, so that was wonderful. Got to come together with this wonderful group of co-authors who share amazing stories of transformation. Um, and the second book is called Resilient AF Volume 2, and it is found right now on Amazon. I believe you can get it Kindle or order paperback. And this is another gathering of just incredible stories of resilience from all different uh, kinds of experiences and people. And it was it was kind of a is this real life experience for me because the launch was at the beginning of the year in New York City in Times Square with all of the co-authors being featured on a billboard. And it was just
That's so amazing.
incredible. It is amazing. But what was even more amazing and touched me even more was meeting the contributing authors in
Mhm.
person and
Yeah.
getting to know them on such a personal level. Even though we were only there for like 48 hours, it was
Yeah.
an incredible experience. Those stories they run the gamut of
Mhm.
how people engage their resilience to move through life in a different way. And so, no, I'm very proud. This is one of those things that has always been on my mind, but I've not really taken steps toward doing it. And so to have it come to fruition is quite the thing for me. So I thank you for asking about them.
Yeah, of course. And you are working on a platform of sorts. So if you want to share about that and what your website is, and we'll put it in the description as well. But if you want to
Yeah.
share it verbally for everybody who's listening, that's
Oh,
always
thank you.
helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. As I'm working on the Prosilience building blocks with caregivers, one of them is choosing or engaging your resilience problem solving muscles. And there are 7 of them: positivity, confidence, priorities, creativity, connection, structure, and experimenting. And from those conversations, as well as my personal experience, I know that the connection resilience muscle is very difficult to access sometimes. It drains our energy to do that as caregivers. And so I wanted to create a place for caregivers to come together where we can feel connected, and one that's outside of some of the private Facebook groups, which are very helpful and they give a lot of wonderful resources, and you get that acknowledgement and the empathy. But I wanted one that's more like this, where we can have conversations, video, face-to-face conversations. People can ask asynchronistic questions, because I remember
Mhm.
being in my daughter's hospital room sometimes late at night and just being like, oh, I just need to see if other people have felt this way.
Yeah.
And so this is a platform that I hope to have going very soon where people can come into the community, ask those questions. If you don't want to be on camera, that's fine, but
Mhm.
to have that human connection so that we can
Yeah.
start to build our strength of our connection muscle to help support us through the long journey of caregiving.
Yeah. Well, and I love the concept in addition to being able to see the person who's asking the question. Um, and I find typically in the caregiving communities, people are very supportive and all of that. But
Very.
whenever you can just quickly type a response, it's not always as well thought out as, oh, I have to, you
Mhm.
know, say what I'm thinking and my face is there. Like this is me saying what I think.
Yeah.
So I love the concept of it because I think people will get very well thought out, heartfelt responses if somebody's going to take the time to put themselves on camera.
I certainly hope so. And it's not going to be one, it's one where I'm going to be in the community, of course, and facilitating and answering questions and hopefully providing some support groups and
Mhm.
bringing in experts to talk about different caregiving things. But it's also about the other caregivers who are
Yeah.
of like mind, who have either been there or are thinking the same thing, being able to come on and leave. And they're short videos, it can be like
Mhm.
30 seconds, 2 minutes. And I want it to be a place of come as you are. Like,
Yes.
let's meet each other where we're at. Are you in the hospital and you need to leave a question and your hair is a mess and you just woke up and you haven't brushed your teeth yet? Great. I love you
Hair's a mess
exactly
is a
as you
given.
are.
Like if your
Yeah.
hair's done,
Like,
you're way beyond where I ever was.
yeah. Right. I remember sometimes being woken up by rounds outside of my dollar store with the care team and just like
Mhm.
running out and like covering myself because I wasn't all put together and
Yeah.
throwing my glasses on and being in slippers. But
Yeah.
the point of the community will be showing up,
Yes.
showing up for yourself to get the
Mhm.
support that you deserve, and showing up for others to show them that they're being seen, heard, and valued and acknowledged in the work that they're doing. And yeah, and that's my vision. And I am getting it going. And I hope that people find it helpful and supportive and uplifting.
Yeah. Oh, well, I know they will. And I am looking forward to seeing it and participating. So, what is the website that people can go and get more information?
Sure. So I should have picked a different title, but it's prosilienccoach.com. So you have to think about spelling it. It's PROSILIENCE coach.com. And all of my information's there. How I like to support family caregivers. I like to go speak to organizations who see a gap in the resources and support they're able to provide to their community of family and caregivers. And I like to share from my training as well as my personal and lived experience. So prosilienccoach.com. Um, Hang tight. There will be information coming about the family caregiver connection community, and it's going to be up and running shortly. So,
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and all of the things that you've learned and your insight and advice with us. Jenn Fredericks, Prosilience coach. And for everyone in the audience, if you need additional information, you can go to her website or you can find more at mine, which is carefulist.com. We will see you all next time. Take care.